that, our first presenter is Professor Cheryl Vallander, and Cheryl is the coordinator of the journalism program at Sheridan. She also teaches within the program. So Cheryl, over to you.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. As I said, my name is Cheryl Vallander. I'm the coordinator of the journalism program and teach in that program. And I'm going to be talking to you today about a COIL project that we completed in the winter of 2022. I'm going to tell you what COIL is in a second. So the question that we were asking was, how do we connect our journalism students with other journalism students around the globe? And it started off quite organically. In the fall of 2019, faculty from the journalism program at Manchester Metropolitan University came to Sheridan for a tour and to establish a partnership, potentially some pathways. And over coffee, we talked about some different projects that we had been working on, what our courses were about. We had created some magazines and we had some websites that we done. And we thought, now I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to work together here on one of these projects. No explanation needed, winter of 2020. So I'll just move on. But that is when we moved online. And so that was winter 2020. And then in the fall of 2021, thought, let's revisit this again. So we met online, kind of had a revisit of the idea of collaboration. And there was the introduction of COIL, which again, I'm going to talk about in a second. And in the winter of 2022, so 3 months later, is when we had a course called Digital Solutions Journalism. And we felt that that was the perfect place for COIL. So what does COIL stand for? Collaborative. So peer-to-peer experiential learning with a focus on teamwork. Online, so learning to work with a remote team and manage virtual tools in a professional manner. International, cross-cultural learning by bringing the world into the classroom. And learning, so enhancing existing curriculum with virtual collaboration and learning from peers around the world. So I really felt that our digital solutions journalism was the course that it would land. So the course, what is the course about? In this course, students manage a news website and develop a major digital journalism project. So they use technology for innovative content creation and data representation and produce rich original material. So from beginning to end. So they pitch ideas for a story that are going to be covered by the entire class for the entire semester. And they decide where their skills would best be put to use and how the content should be portrayed. So there's a few different ways for how it works. So the students at Sheridan would be pitching a project topic. So the whole class, every individual, and that's what they're graded on, is pitching a topic. From there, they then vote on the topic. And the faculty, we act more as mentors to the students. We try to group the projects so that a lot of the topics that they're pitching can be grouped together, so that everybody is kind of doing something that they're really interested in. I'm going to show you some examples from previous years. Once the main topic has been decided, students pitch stories related to that main topic. And students work together in a lot of ways. So whether that's having someone doing research, someone doing reporting, someone else might be doing infographics, so that they're all working together in groups, but also as a wider group as well. Students also apply for various positions. So we would have a project coordinator, again, writers, researchers, reporters, designers. So everybody is kind of having to work together, which kind of would mimic industry. Designer is not going to be the one who might be reporting, right? So we tried to do that as well within the class. And the other thing that the students do is define what deliverables they can accomplish each week. So we don't tell them what they have to do. They tell us what they're going to do. So this allowed the students to really define really clear tasks for themselves based on how busy they were, what family commitments they might have, what other classes they might have. And then that's what they're graded on, is actually delivering what they've said they would. So a student might say, you know what, this week, I know I have 2 midterms in other classes. I have a family birthday to go to, and I'm working part-time. So they might say, realistically, this is all I can get done. And as long as they did that, that was what they would be marked on. So because of the timing, the Manchester students couldn't participate with the pitching process just because their holidays and exams didn't align with ours. But I'm going to show you a couple of the projects that we've done in the past. So these are the projects that the journalism students at Sheridan had done, starting with digitally dependent relationships. So you can see that there's a number of topics here, and then there's multiple stories within that. This was the first year we did this project. We were nominated for Global Editors Network Data Journalism Award. We went to Barcelona and we lost to the New York Times. But what 2-year journalism program gets to say you lost to the New York Times? So very, very proud moment. Inside the Millennial Mind, where someone had pitched something about eating disorders, someone pitched something about mental health, suicide, the cost of mental health. So we're able to group a lot of the topics. What are the chances that your race, gender, income, and mental health will have an impact on your opportunities in life? Again, this project was nominated for an Online News Association award. We went to Los Angeles with the students. We didn't win, but it's okay. Like, I think that being nominated with graduate schools when this is a 2-year, and thinking to myself, our students are 4 years out of grade 8. So it was an incredible moment. And then a few years ago, they did a really powerful project called the Blurred Lines of Racism, looking at the roots of racism, systemic racism, cultural appropriation, the color of racism, and how we can move forward. So these are all projects that students have done in the past. And in 2022, these were the pitches that we got from the students. So they wanted to look at homelessness, seniors, people addicted to social media, COVID, although they didn't want to focus on that too much. And what all the topics being pitched had in common was the idea of loneliness. And so that was the theme that we went with, was how can we portray loneliness with all these different topics. So then we had to get the Manchester students involved. And so we gave them a couple options. Because we had the umbrella of loneliness, they could either pitch stories related to the main topic. They could produce a story that the Sheridan students had already pitched, but from a UK perspective. And then they were in constant contact with our project coordinator. So because the Sheridan course is a program elective, we had about 13 students, and it was voluntary for Manchester. So we had about 6 students from Manchester get involved. And it ranged from students that were in, it's a 4-year program. So we had students that were in 3rd and 4th year. And we also had students from their graduate program that also wanted to be involved as well. And the students met on Zoom. And some of the best discussions happened when the faculty left. So what we did is we decided we would set up a breakout room for faculty. We left the students in the main room, and they bonded over music, films, what their day was like, what was their courses like, what courses are they taking. And in the faculty room, you know, we talked about food and movies and what have you been watching on Netflix. And it was really quite organic for how they could just meet and talk. Some of the friendships have continued. There's a UK student coming to Canada this summer who's planning on meeting with a couple of the students from the project. So they did build some incredible friendships. And this is the project that the students came up with. So this is the homepage of the project. It's called Layers of Loneliness. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the project. So this here is the opening video. I'm gonna play it. It's about 2 minutes long. And you'll notice that there were Sheridan and Manchester students in the video that contributed to this. It is playing.
Loneliness to me is when you're feeling
That
alone
means sound.
in a crowded space or when you're out with friends.
You want me to try again?
I'm just going to open the YouTube link. Sometimes that.
It's not, it's embedded right here.
Oh, it's embedded.
It's embedded in here, yeah.
Loneliness to me is when you're feeling alone in a crowded space or when you're out with friends and feeling like you have
If you
no
go
one
to
left to turn to.
layersofloneliness.com.
Example of loneliness can be someone who feels alone.
We started from where you were there.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Layers of loneliness. Yep,
All right. Where would we find the video?
it's the very first thing that should come up. There it is.
Let's see if this works.
Takes a second.
Loneliness to me is
Okay, I think I know what's going on. Apologies, everyone.
Sorry.
Share.
Okay. Okay.
when
Yeah, that's
There we
why. Okay. So actually, this should now work in your presentation as well too.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So share screen again, desktop 2, don't share the sound. Let's see if this works now.
Yes. Thank you.
loneliness to me is when you're feeling alone in a crowded space or when you're out with friends and feeling like you have no one left to turn to.
Example of loneliness can be someone who feels alone despite being surrounded by other people, because that person feels unwanted.
Loneliness is when you're struggling mentally, but nobody understands.
So I think loneliness kind of perpetuates itself. I think the lonely people get depressed. I think depression is very attractive socially, and that leads to more loneliness or depression. So it's a cycle.
Loneliness to me is people thinking that I'm an other, or an outsider, because of the way I look or the way I choose to dress.
Loneliness is a symptom of our society. We don't realize how obsessed we become with work culture. We don't realize how many valuable relationships we let slip away and how isolated we truly become.
Loneliness is a state of emotional and psychological exclusion that we feel whenever we compare ourselves to others or feel unwanted by a group we want to be included into.
Loneliness to me isn't around being alone, but rather in those times when you search for help from friends and family and don't get the support that you need.
Loneliness is feeling isolated or misunderstood. It can happen alone or in a crowd.
Loneliness affects people in different ways. Feeling lonely may lead you to believe that there's nobody to turn to or confide in, even if you're surrounded by friends and family who love you.
Loneliness is the feeling of an empty hand. Loneliness is the inability to speak to the people.
So I think one of the benefits of doing a project like this is that we're hearing the students' voices, so that also is giving us as faculty an opportunity to see more inside what our students are thinking as well. So the students looked at loneliness around the world. You know, they looked at prisons, seniors living alone, homelessness. So they did homelessness from a perspective, from a Canadian perspective. They did homelessness from a UK perspective. They did looking at seniors and loneliness. So the entire website is really rich with content, data, infographics, podcasts, audio clips, interviews. There's so much content here. Mental health and loneliness. And I don't know if you noticed at the beginning, one of the things that a student had pitched was films. He wanted to talk about films. He liked film critics. So we said, okay, that's what you want to do. Let's talk about how cinemas portray loneliness. And so he was able to get an interview with Chris Knight, who is a film critic. And they really talked a lot about the different films that portray loneliness. So everybody really got to do something that they were interested in, which is why I think the project was so successful. And then the final section was coping and prevention. And one of the things that a student had said was, like, I kind of use music to combat my loneliness. And the student said, yeah, me too. And we said, okay, let's come up with a playlist. And that's what the students did. They actually have a joint playlist of the students of the songs that they really enjoyed. And I just want to draw your attention to this little section that they said, from Canada to the United Kingdom, the students that collaborated on this project connected because they all had at least one thing in common, the feeling of being alone, and it brought us together. So these are students from UK and Canada. Again, we had 6 Manchester students. We had 14 Sheridan students in all. These were some of the comments that they said after the project, but it built a sense of community. It was nice to collaborate. They liked that they could explore the similarities and also the approaches to loneliness across the world. A student said it was one of their favorite pieces, a great experience, put you out of your comfort zone. And that kind of brings us to where we are now. So this past winter, we decided we were going to expand the project, and we did. We decided we would bring in another school. We brought in Riara University, which is in Kenya. So we had Manchester, Sheridan, and Riara working together. This was a big challenge, trying to find a time. Our class runs from 9 to 12. That in Manchester, that's 2 to 5 until we spring forward, and then it's not. And in Nairobi, it was 5 to 8. So we had pitch day on January 26th. The difference was that the Riara students actually pitched to us. They gave us video pitches and we played them. And so students voted on those as well. This was our first class. It was mandatory for Riara. So that was a bit of a challenge. And this is the project. They did S is for survival. And it's all stories of survival. One of the changes we made was to bring in a project coordinator from each school. So now we had Dahlia from Sheridan, Kate from Riara, and Ruby from Manchester. And the 3 of them have become best friends, meeting at least 3 times a week. We had 56 students, 13 from Sheridan, 6 from Manmet, and 37 from Riara. And these are some of the comments. That was a refreshing change, though we were different, we're still similar. Enlightening. And then what the Sheridan students had said, oops, just skip that one. Useful skills, bringing them together, and skills they can apply in the future. So the next steps are probably to expand it even further, maybe with multiple projects, maybe 2 or 3 at the same time, but really, really exciting stuff happening. So thank you. Thanks very much.
Cheryl,
Thank you.
Congratulations on that work. And
Thank
especially
you.
the expansion, and can see how it's going to grow and where it's going to go. And we need that.
Yeah.
The
Definitely.
world needs that. And it's interesting because when you look at sort of why perhaps your students gravitate towards loneliness, why is that? We have a lot of problems in the world today. I think we all feel lonely. And so with that in mind, we're going to transition and, how do we solve for that? What is the role of business in helping solve that? What is our role as educators within the education sector in helping solve that? How can we leverage and bring in wider collaborations across sectors and industries? So with that, Professor Edith Callahan is going to be joining us and coming up and getting set for her presentation. And as she does that, I'll just let you know that Professor Callahan took business strategy at the FC Managed School of Business at Acadia University in Nova Scotia. So she's traveled a bit. We appreciate that. And she's also the coordinator for Environment and Sustainability Studies program at Acadia as well. So over to you.
Thank you. And I have gotten so much out of every single presentation I've heard here so far. It's really fantastic, and I hope that I'm able to continue that trend. So thank you all for being here. Edith Callahan from Acadia University. Acadia is a primarily undergraduate university. It's got a pretty high ranking in terms of quality of education. It's also known as a party school for many of the students. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through. We have 3,500 students about, so it is small. But I'm in the business school, which is one of the largest units on campus. So I'll be talking about, I'm not talking about a research project, I'm talking about a class that I've been doing for many years and refining every time I do it. Yeah, so my presentation outline, first I'm going to share with you some of my assumptions and biases around what I think students need. I'm going to talk about the course subject and an overview just to put you in where I am. Very quickly, I'm going to go through some of the theoretical foundations and background. I'll talk about the translation of strategic issues for my students, which I'll define for you in a second. This is done within a context of ungrading, so I'll talk about that, and then I'll give you the course results. The purpose of this presentation is to share my experiences with getting students to grapple with tough issues, to share my experiences with ungrading, and hopefully to get some feedback and more great ideas from you guys. So my assumptions and biases: most students really do want to learn. Contrary to what many of my colleagues think, I believe that they really do want to be challenged and learn. Also, graduates after 2020 or undergrads from 2020 and on have a heightened sense of liminality. Pandemic kids have a visceral awareness that the world can change on a dime, of course, and this increases feelings of uncertainty and anxiety. And even if they don't act on it every day, all of these students really do care about climate change. They care about biodiversity decline. They care about health and wellness. They just don't really know how to act on it and carry that tough stuff forward. So to navigate this, I believe business students really need to be supported in facing hard and inconvenient truths in a way that help them to move beyond apathy, to move beyond acquiescence. We need to encourage them to think beyond short term, which is difficult for business students because they're very short term oriented. And they need to develop more of an appreciation of the relationship between and the dependence between a healthy business environment and a healthy society and natural environment. So now on to the course. Strategic issues are societal, technological, political, environmental, and economic issues that exist beyond the traditional boundaries of industry or an organization, exist beyond the conventionally thought of competitive arena, and they can impact an organization's ability to achieve its strategy. Strategic issues can compromise or give advantage to a particular business or industry, depending on how prepared organizational managers are. So the horizon is here, like, can you see what's coming over the horizon? That pandemic that's just like a speck over there on the horizon, or climate change, or whatever it is. So this is how I frame the class for my students. The basic course structure is the first 3 weeks, I go through a bunch of theoretical frameworks with them. I'm going to give you the entire course now in the next 10 minutes. So we talk about futures thinking. I talk about ethical blindness, a strategic framework for strategic sustainable development, the adaptive cycle for organizations, and technological transitions management. I review 16 strategic issues with that, or it's not 16, 6 strategic issues with them through weeks 4 to 9 of the course. These are the ones that I have worked on over many years. Sometimes they change. Of course, there could be others there. We could add another week or 10 weeks to go over other strategic issues. The remainder of the course includes workshops and guest speakers and student presentations, and this is all done within a context of ungrading, lots of stories and lots of data. So, to the theory, strategic thinking, I use a framework presented by Institute for the Future, where they define the future as 10 years out. So 10 years being far enough that you can still kind of reach it, but also far enough that things can change a lot in 10 years. Thinkers don't predict the future, they forecast and lean into the future that they want to create. And we talk a lot about signals that exist now that you might want to amplify for a positive future or dampen for a future that you don't want to see. So really, this is introducing that there's always possibilities out there in the future. So this is really about creating flexibility for the students and a little bit of confidence that they, whatever is happening now, they don't have to get stuck in right here, right now. There is a future that we can lean into. Then we move on to the framework for strategic sustainable development. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but it really is a process for organizations to walk through or work through to go through the funnel of sustainability as we increase demand on our resources and that there's decreasing ability for our environment to give us what we want. We eventually are moving through the funnel, whether we do it with grace or not. It's going to happen one way or another. So we want to use the sustainability principles that I'll go over very quickly to help us move through that tight space with relative, well, not ease, but maybe some sort of dignity and grace. I also talk about ethical blindness. Really, this comes right down to why good people can do bad things and how good people can be led astray by bad people. This is Elizabeth Holmes there from Theranos that some of you might know about, and Trevor Milton from Nicola, both like great examples of kind of bad people that really took some good people for a ride. And then during these first couple of weeks, I have my students write 2 700-word essays that I grade for all individually. In terms of strategic sustainable development, I'm not going to read all this, but you can look at it for yourself. Basically, these are principles for moving towards sustainability. So we have the SDGs, they're great. Those are goals that can lead you into 17 different ways. We have a triple bottom line, people, profit, planet. That's fine too, but there's no principles there. So these are really principles for operating and moving towards sustainability that, again, you can look at in more detail later. We also talk about adaptive cycle for organizations. So organizations change is not something to be afraid of, it's to be embraced. And organizations that can move through an adaptive cycle have a better chance of surviving and growing and continuing on. For this last semester, I talked about the Colorado River and how farmers responded initially with the Colorado River to avoid, how to manage it, but to avoid flooding. And now they're having to re-respond because of drought conditions. I was also reading an article yesterday about the climate hackers in Malawi, and I think that would be a great example of the adaptive cycle to bring up next semester. The final theory I talk about with them is technological transition management. So this talks about a dominant regime within a system. So we could talk about a fossil fuel dominant society. And you might have niche innovations wanting to break through alternative energies, but you really need the buy-in from the social regime in the middle to allow you to change the dominant landscape. For this one, I have my students listen to a Drake podcast all about the relationship between R&B and rap through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they have no clue why is she having us listen to this. But when they listen to it and then I walk through this theory, they totally get it and they love it. So again, there's another 700-word essay that they have to work on for this. So now on to strategic issues. So we go through the theory and that's kind of the groundwork for them. And then we move into the strategic issues that are clustered up there on the top. This forms the basis of their major assignment for this semester. So there's a major group assignment, groups between 4 to 5 people, certainly not larger than 5. The students select an industry and they examine the impact of that industry on 3 of these strategic issues and the impact of the strategic issue on their industry. So industries, popular industries include fashion, cosmetics, aerospace, banking, you know, they get to choose their industry and then they look at strategic issues through the lens of that industry and they have a paper and a presentation due at the end of the semester. When I'm lecturing on the strategic issues, we meet twice a week and I break it into lecture and workshop. On Monday, students review materials that I have for that strategic issue. I am podcast heavy with these guys. So they can walk around, walk to the gym, be in the gym, listening to their coursework. Reading is not a popular activity, although I do have reading as well. And they have to submit a reflection on the material that I assign them. In class, I ask them to place where they stand on a foursquare of agency and influence that I'll talk about in a second. Then I lecture on the current discussions, perspectives and data related to the strategic issues. So this foursquare, I asked them, everybody stand up. Okay, now tell me, do you feel like you have a lot of influence or a little influence with respect to climate change or racism? Do you feel like things are getting better in society or worse in society? And students place themselves in the room and then we get to have a conversation about that. And I love that I thought of this. It was completely spur of the moment, but the students gave me really positive feedback at the end of this semester for this exercise specifically. I think it is the physical movement of getting up and placing themselves where they believe they belong. And there was a lot of diversity in what students thought. So Wednesday is more about group learning. Before class, students submit an annotated bibliography of 3 resources that relate to the week's strategic issue and their industry. In class, students share their resources amongst their group. Then there's a full class discussion where each industry sits with respect to that week's strategic issue. And again, I have a foursquare up on the blackboard and I say, okay, so where do you put cosmetics? And then I have them tell me why. So there's interaction between the students and then between their groups and then between each group, and me and all the groups are listening to each other. So everybody's learning about each other's industry. So that is how the course is handled. One more thing here, for each strategic issue, going back to those principles of sustainability, I relate each of those strategic issues to one or more of those 8 principles. So there's constant referral back, and I also talk about technological regimes. So I'm always bringing the theory back into each of these very practical discussions. Excuse me. Now, finally, ungrading. So the setup at the beginning of the semester, we talk a lot about learning as distinct from what they produce. And we also talk about the subjective nature of the assignments and how I really want to try to assess their learning, not so much their end product. Some students loved the unlearning, some students hated it. Extensive comments were given throughout the semester, so those 700-word essays and also the final projects. I said to them, the problem I had found in the past is if I give them a number, they focus on the number and they don't read my comments. If I give no number, then they have to read the comments. And then they come talk to me about, what does this mean? I also had a TA assess the weekly assignments around the strategic issues. At midterm, I met with every single student for 10 to 15 minutes. I had about 85 students. So that was a busy week, but it was so worth it. Meeting these students one-on-one like that and they appreciated it so much. Prior to that meeting, students submitted a document where they placed their own learning during the semester, and we were able to discuss that. Now, the grading actually did start at presentation time towards the end of the semester because I am doing ungrading within a grading system. There's the challenge. I did offer a final one-on-one to students that wanted it, and students performed, I must say they performed very well in the semester. After midterm check-ins, many of those who had not participated in class before, they were participating, and most of the final presentations and papers were of high quality. Two challenges. Ungrading within a grading system, that is really difficult and caused challenges for me and my students. Also, this whole process led to me building relationships with my students. Like, I really cared about their success. And I'm not 100% sure of my ability to be objective in the final grading that I did. So I don't know, I might have to do a test on that one. Here's my class evaluations. This is out of 5, 5 being good, 5 being not, or 1 being not so good. I just want to point out 3 items here. First, because of my ego, I'm just going to talk about this last one. Overall instructor effectiveness, 4.33. Excuse me, the number to the right of that is our school average. So it's a little bit better than the average for students. But then this is interesting. So remember I said I gave a lot of feedback throughout the semester. This is what I'm thinking. But that was my lowest score from the students. Professor provides feedback regarding my progress during the course. Yet right above that, professor was reasonably available for consultation and was responsive to requests for consultation. 4.63, my highest grade. So this tells me for this one, the feedback, what they're responding to is, I didn't get a number. I needed a number. That's my life raft. And so this is still my struggle with students. Like, how do I get them to how do I pry their fingers comfortably off of the life raft? That's it for my presentation. I thank you very much, and I look forward to feedback.
I love the ungrading, and yet grading, right? That's a whole day and a half, I think, into it. All that conversation. Thank you, Professor. So just to briefly, I think I love what Edith described about the sustainability principles, the FSSDs for business students and for business leaders of the future, right? So a system to follow to help build a better future. And to help us plan and navigate strategic issues like AI, artificial intelligence, right, to better navigate the future. So with that, and just looking at the clock, so we're going to have the Q&A coming up the last half hour, so that'll be at 12 noon. But what I'll do is invite Mark up to introduce our next speaker. So Mark Malnick, our co-chair, and he's going to explain a little bit more about where we're going to take the conversation now.
Yeah, well, first of all, both presentations wonderful. I've taken a few notes, and hopefully a couple of the items that I've remembered after hearing these from some of my favorite writers. It will spur some positive discussion afterwards. But right now, I'd like to introduce you to our last presenter for the day, Dr. Mona Ateni from the University of Beirut. She's a published author, having written about entrepreneurship, women, ethics and education. She is going to talk today about the rise of AI chatbots and suggestions for integrating in higher education. This is, just make sure you know, this is the real me, and I'm not an avatar created by Chat GPT. Although that might have been better. Anyway, take it away, Mona, thanks. Or Dr.
All right, hi everyone, really happy to be here with you all. I can show the screen will work. Yeah, okay. So I think this is a timely manner, and then we've had these like, side chats with some of you. Everyone was so excited about this session because I believe now's the time when we are hearing a lot of either very good stuff or really like scary stuff about AI chatbots in specific and how they're gonna really change the face of education. Some professors maybe are afraid they're gonna be like, just erased altogether, and the AI chatbots will replace the teacher. Whereas others are really concerned about cheating and how students are going to use them to cheat their way around, while others are actually making use of them and making them help their daily activities, sometimes a little bit of their research and so on. So there's of course a lot of controversy, and this is why I decided for this conference, and because again this is a timely matter and it has been brought up in our university a lot in the past 6 months, to do some research on this topic and to experiment with it in my classes, which are in the business school. So I mainly teach entrepreneurship. I integrate design thinking in my courses as well, and I'm planning to integrate some of the activities I'm going to talk about today in my MBA course in the summer. And hopefully this will result in a paper. So we're going to talk about AI in higher education, the rise of AI chatbots, strengths and weaknesses of AI chatbots, suggestions for integration in higher education, and some future work. So as you all know, artificial intelligence is the talk of the town. Like only this morning, I got a big news notification about the big tech giants and how they are using the word AI in their earnings calls. Like Alphabet has used it over 50 times, Microsoft has used it like 48 times. So, and also I'm an alumni of the D School of Stanford University, where I earned like a professional certificate with them. And they sent us like, I would like our alumni to actually use and test this AI chatbot that does 1, 2, 3. So this is really in right now, and it's very trending. So artificial intelligence, as you all know, is the use of computer systems to simulate human mental processes, such as interpreting and generating language. And today we're particularly talking about this language capability, because when you talk about chatbots, they mostly do that, like they interpret language and generate language. Of course, there are other types of AI that do other types of things, and definitely this will only get better with that. But I'm not going to be talking about all AI, just like a specific part of it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit about AI applications in education. So these are some of the things that research has shown. Of course, chatbots is what we're talking about today. So for me, this is the focus. But of course, we can talk about virtual or smart assistants. We can talk about e-payments if you think about students and like making the university process, registration, payments, all easier. AI could also help in administration of higher ed or even K-12 schools, intelligent tutoring systems, data-driven decision-making for both the teacher, for the assistant, for the administration, or for the student. Automate administrative tasks. Again, we're talking about teachers or admins. Provide student feedback. During COVID, there has been a lot of use of AI to detect cheating when students are taking their in-home exam. Of course, there was also a big controversy around that, about privacy and so on. But facial recognition is definitely one potential usage of AI in education. Text editors like Grammarly and so on, and of course providing teachers with different kinds of support. So AI chatbots are not new, and now I'm going to show you a little bit of literature review. Of course, now, like maybe 6 months ago, it has taken the world by storm because of ChatGPT and how powerful people thought it was. But what happened is that they have progressed. So why we're talking a lot about it now, it's not because it's new, but because they have progressed from just a proof of concept to really like industrial strength products, and now everyone is so scared about them because they could see the power in them. And of course, it will only improve with time, so it's not gonna go backwards. Of course, you can also hear about some tech giants as well shutting down some chatbots because they weren't performing well, and this is normal because again, this is still all in R&D and in testing phase. We had this like lengthy email thread coming up to our university email for the faculty members. And this is one example, like this is an email we got. A friend asked the bot to write a classical sonnet about the mathematical equation A equals CF squared, and this is what ChatGPT actually gave them. Like it's amazing. It's like so good. And honestly, when I copy and pasted this on an AI text detector, instead of this is 100% human generated. Oh, okay. So it's another threat. Like even those AI detected are never fully accurate. Okay, but like really, if you would like to read, and it's somehow self-criticism of the ChatGPT itself, of the AI chatbot, like an algorithm of control called and sly, where time and force is in deadly balance lies against of something sensitive to spark. So it's really interesting what it could do. These are some snippets from the email thread that we received as faculty members. So one of them said, I gave my students their first homework today and asked them to do it using ChatGPT. You have to embrace it. And then there was a reply, this is probably not meant for us to embrace, but more for her to erase us. Okay. And then someone said, until we have a more adequate method to cope, we have opted for old school. And this for me was the prompt of this entire research. Like, really, are you gonna go back to in-class examinations, oral recitation, take-home essays are not encouraged? I was like, seriously, like, this is crazy, right? But some people are actually doing that in their classes. Okay, and then someone sent like Microsoft adds a $10 billion to invest in ChatGPT maker OpenAI. So again, there are all these kinds of contradictory reactions. Now a little bit on the literature review, and I'm gonna show you this interesting thing. Like I asked one of my RAs to actually help me with the literature review on this topic for this conference in particular. So I gave him this prompt, okay, by email, and this is not the full prompt, so I gave him like a deadline to first find 10 references and like to create a table, and I gave him the format and so on. And then another deadline to actually write down this like 4-page literature review. And when the deadline was over, he told me, I uploaded the document yesterday. I used ChatGPT for rephrasing the chosen snippets from the different papers. I tried to use it for reading the whole document, summarizing it, and for citations, but it failed to do so. And I was like, I'm so glad it failed to do so. It gave wrong output, wrong authors, and wrong links. So just like how, like, I never thought, like, by being very deliberate about what I wanted, that he would actually try to go and just use ChatGPT to try to do the work. Like, but this is how students, he's a graduate student, by the way. This is how they are thinking. So we have a lot of research papers that were published on the topic, even again before this huge rise of ChatGPT. So that's not a new thing. Here, like this, just a snapshot of some of the literature. And I will tell you in a summary that most of the papers that actually tested some usage of AI chatbots in some way in education, because there are different uses, mostly the results were positive. But definitely there were some concerns and some drawbacks or disadvantages. So for example, here Abbas says course evaluation. So we saw the course evaluation in your case. So they, instead of using the traditional surveys, they actually used Hubert.ai, which is an AI conversational agent. And this actually led to students engaging better in this course evaluation process and to giving better feedback, not better in terms of just like higher score, but like more substantive, like more, in-depth and so on. So this is one example of how it could be used actually, because I am a firm believer in these like questionnaires that students fill at the end of the course to evaluate us and our courses, and I believe in many cases it is unfair. So maybe having a better way for them to interact and converse about their experience will definitely do good for everyone. I'm not gonna go over all of these, but maybe, for example, here talking about chatbot prototypes require resolution of some challenges before they can be considered ready for use. So again, there's still skepticism based on research, based on tests that have been done. Also, there are feelings of isolation due to the absence of personal interactions among participants. This remains to be one of the biggest drawbacks of AI chatbots, because although they are somehow powerful and they would definitely help students learn better and help teachers have more time for their research, alleviate some admin daunting tasks, but still they do result in, again, the loneliness part. Like, we do feel more lonely when we are increasingly interacting with a chatbot rather than actual human beings. So these are some of the findings in the literature. Also, a part of the email thread that we got, and I think this is something we have all to keep in mind. I don't know if your institutions have created AI policies, but this is something that is like part of the process of managing all of these concerns. There should be an AI policy. This is like just, like a draft that one of the professors sent. And this could be integrated into the syllabi of the courses. So again, each professor should determine whether they want to encourage the use of AI, or maybe, I don't know, I don't think discouraging is honestly like a good option, but they have to mention something about it and how to be done. For example, if you provide minimum effort prompts, you'll likely get low quality results. It's something that students don't necessarily understand. And also we have realized that some students just like put a prompt, copy pasted the answer, and even it showed that ChatGPT was answering, like it didn't even bother to refine anything. And of course, they got a 0. Also, there are some talks about how to acknowledge AI in students' work. So if you want to embrace it, if you want to encourage students to use it wisely and consciously, then they have to also acknowledge it somehow. So here is a resource by UCL. You can check it online, and it actually like tells the students step by step how they need to acknowledge it. And part of it is like you should tell the student what are the prompts that you used and what were the results that you got. Okay, so of course I'll show you now, like you have to read a prompt ChatGPT multiple times to get what you really want. It's not just like, one sentence and you're done. It's not that simple. Even if students want to use it, they have to put some effort into it to get the results that they want to. Some ideas to help students use AI tools effectively. So again, I'm going to be testing all of this during my summer course, and hopefully write the paper for this conference based on the findings. First of all, we need to introduce AI tools, because this is something that we don't do. We just take it for granted that they either know or don't know, and just hope for the best. So we have to like deliberately introduce them and orient them towards the right way of using it. And I'm planning to actually have an in-class exercise with my MBA students on that, and where they experiment with different prompts and they see what happened. And they have to reflect on the results and how did it change as they change their prompts as well. We need to provide support as teachers, so teaching students that these tools offer tips or step-by-step instructions. We need to monitor their work and give feedback. So if there is any assignment, for example, that integrates the use of an AI chatbot or ChatGPT in our case, then we have to make sure that they have used it properly and give them feedback on what happened there and how it could be improved. We have to encourage their critical thinking. Again, the AI chatbot and ChatGPT, I experimented a lot with it in the past few days in preparation of this presentation. Tells you many times, like, I could give you inaccurate answers, I could give you wrong output, but you have to be conscious about this and exercise critical thinking. And although we know that, and we do that as people who are professionals, we do research, we do teaching, not all students know that. So we have to reinforce this kind of thinking a lot of times. And we have to stay up to date, and this is something also we touched upon in the previous session. Like, teachers many times are not really up to date. I know it's like maybe asking a lot of them, but in that sense, they have to somehow stay on top of the technology that they want to use or encourage using, or the tools in their classes. problems that AI can pose to education. And by the way, this is based on ChatGPT's own opinion. Like when you ask it, like, what are the weaknesses of AI chatbots in education? And this is what it, of course, what is written here, if you want to see is cheating. And so I asked it, what about cheating? And I said, yeah, of course, like students might use me for cheating, but I highly discourage that. And like, again, dishonesty and so on. So the lack of personalization, although AI chatbots are also used for personalized learning, by the way, adaptive learning, people of different, cognitive abilities and so on. However, again, they are not human, so there's the lack of human interaction and such. Bias and discrimination, as you all know, and this has been raised many, many times in the past in AI in general. For example, Amazon, they used an AI recruiter to recruit engineers, and in 1 month they had recruited purely male engineers, and then they stopped it because it was biased. Why? Because the data that has been trained on is also biased. Okay, dependence on technology. We are afraid that our students will become too much dependent on technology and they don't know what to do without it if they are asked, or they are put in a situation where they can't have access to technology. And finally, data privacy and security, which is definitely, I mean, ChatGPT is like recording everything, all our prompts, everything we are saying, where do they go, how are they stored, how are they used? We have no idea about these things. Because again, all this regulation is lagging in terms of technology. So how would you use AI in class? Again, not AI in general, but AI chatbots. So I teach entrepreneurship, and I asked ChatGPT many times, like, how could we use ChatGPT in an entrepreneurship course? It gave me some ideas. I mean, I wasn't fully convinced about all of them, but some of them made sense. For example, in entrepreneurship, the students have to come up with a business plan. They work towards a startup project, and part of it is marketing plan. And so ChatGPT actually recommended that it could help the students refine and make their marketing plan a better one. And I asked it, can you give me an actual example of an input and an output that an entrepreneurship student could use? And it said the input would be that our marketing plan is to target our primary customer base through social media, and so on. And then it would actually give them some better ideas or more ideas on some of the elements or areas that they didn't think about. So I think this is really good, because for me, I think that this is a layer of feedback, an additional feedback that ChatGPT is providing, and thus is helping me in my course. So instead of me being the only one who can provide such feedback to the students, before they submit their work, they can actually have this extra layer of feedback. So this is one way to use it, and I think it's like it could be used in several courses as feedback. Also, like one of the things we could use definitely, as I mentioned, in terms of orientation, let students experiment with many different prompts and see what happens. So for example, when I prompted ChatGPT to actually, I gave it the instructions of one of my assignments, I realized that it couldn't do the assignment as I wished, and I was so happy about that, of course. But also we can ask them to try that and see and compare, like what would be like work you do versus the work that it generated, and critically reflect on that. For example, I ask my students to interview actual entrepreneurs and to write a case study about that. Many times their questions are somehow limited. So again, if they didn't come back to me in time to check their questions, then their interview might not be, the best. So if they run these questions by ChatGPT, again, it could give them more suggestions for more questions, and it would help them have better quality interview. It could generate ideas for them in terms of startup, because, an ideation is part of design thinking process. We want as many ideas as possible. And many times, like in the classroom, like we're stuck at 15 ideas and I want 40. So ChatGPT could help them generate more ideas. They could learn about different competitors in the market, because again, even if you do Google search, it's gonna take a lot of time, but ChatGPT could give you a summary and a lot of different competitors at once. And of course, they could brainstorm different costs associated with setting up a startup. Again, this is in the context of entrepreneurship, but I hope you can think about your own courses in the same context. I'm almost done. So how would you detect AI usage? There are multiple ways. Of course, Turnitin, if you have it integrated, for example, into your learning management system, it has like an AI detection score. Also, there are some extensions that you could add to your browser, but I mean, again, you have to rely on the reviews and so on. They're not all reliable. I used this. One of my students recommended it, but as I told you, it falsely told me that something is 100% human, whereas it was AI generated. And I actually took an extract from ChatGPT and took it to it. It told me it's 15% human. And then I just changed really like a few things, and it could directly give me 100%. So it was easy for me to change a few things, and then it would tell me it's a human generated content, which I don't recommend you using, but there are many others more reliable, like Grammarly, Copyscape, Plagiarism Checker X, and Coolbot that are recommended. How much time do we have left? We're almost done.
Almost, but maybe one quick point.
Yes, of course. Okay, so I mentioned the accuracy about these detectors, and finally, I just want to tell you that for the future work, as I mentioned, I will be testing some of the suggestions I provided today in my MBA course. I'm reporting on that, and I would love to hear some suggestions in terms of methodology of reporting on this testing and research. And I highly think that we should approach AI chatbots from a design thinking perspective. So we should always also sit together, ideate together on how we can make use of them in our work, whether as teaching or in our research work or other administrative work, and test that many times and iterate upon it to make sure that it's, again, benefiting us and doing much more good than harm. Thank you so much.